Good evening and welcome back to Ways and Means. We are going to do everything we can to get through this entire agenda before we get back to floor. There have been a few changes, a few additions to the agenda we will be adding at the end of the agenda, and hopefully we can get to it. Senate Bill 450 and Assembly Bill 529, and we will be removing Senate Bill 162. So with that, members, we will open the hearing for Senate Bill 266, and we will invite Senator Pacina to the table. Welcome to Ways. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Ro Moreno, Vice Chair Backus, and Assembly Committee on Ways and Means. For the record, my name is Julie Pazina, representing District 12 in Las Vegas and Henderson, and it's my pleasure to come before you today to present Senate Bill 266, along with co-presenter Michael Alonzo. Some quick background, because I know this is going to be a long evening. Casinos and resorts frequently hold gaming contests and tournaments for which participants pay an entry fee. Currently, those fees are considered part of the gross revenue for a casino and so are included in the calculation of how much the casino must pay for its monthly license fee. The reason for exempting entry fees under these specific circumstances is that none of this money ever actually comes into the casino as income. It's either used to pay employees, as a donation for a nonprofit, or as prize money. So it falls into one of those three buckets and is not revenue. While there's no dollar amount tied to local government fiscal notes, this would result in lost gross gaming tax. We're trying to solve an unintended consequence of taxing casinos for tournament entry fees where casinos have generated no income. Please note that we do have a friendly amendment that will be explained by my co-presenter, Michael Alonzo, and this is in Nellis as reprint 2. With your permission, Chairman Ro Moreno, I'd like to hand it over to Michael Alonzo.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Chairman Ro Moreno and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Michael Alonso, and I'm here on behalf of Caesars Entertainment in support of SB 266. Thank you very, very much for holding this hearing. I want to thank Senator Pazina for sponsoring the bill for the Nevada Resort Association. And there are other members of the Resort Association also here in the audience in support. As Senator Pazina said, prior to the 2019 legislative session, entry fees paid by patrons for the right to enter into contests and tournaments were not taxable. And in 2019, the Gaming Control Board passed the bill. The Resort Association worked with them, and then it became apparent to us in the interim period that there was an interpretation issue on whether these portions of the entry fees were taxable. And as Senator Pazina noted, we're talking about fees. The customer knows when they come into the tournament that they're paying an entry fee to play in the tournament that goes to the prize pool. They're paying an additional fee for employee compensation because tournaments and contests are different than cash games. And if it's a charitable tournament, they're paying a fee for the charity that then goes. We're just basically a conduit for that. And the same thing with the marketing and also the guaranteed prize pools. And so that's what we're doing and trying to clean this up. We worked with the Gaming Control Board prior to the session to come up with this language. The language is very specific on those four buckets. And the language also has backstops that if the fees are not used for their intended purpose, then we have to take them into revenue and pay tax on them. The other portion of the bill, Section 1.5, was amended in the bill on the Senate side. This was one part of the Boyd School of Law annual bill that was proposed by law students to modernize one of the foreign gaming statutes, and it makes the filing requirements more streamlined. There were other portions of that bill that didn't make it through, and so we tried to save this piece of the bill for the law students, and the operators and the gaming equipment manufacturers also appreciate the modernization. The foreign gaming statute was originally enacted in 1977, and the last time it was amended in 1997. So it's more of just trying to streamline the paperwork that is required to be filed with the Gaming Control Board. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that chair or the committee members may have.
Thank you so much. Did you say you have a new amendment?
Julie Pizzina for the record, Chair. The amendment that I was referring to was a friendly amendment that's part of reprint 2, and that was adopted in the Senate. So that's part of the bill. In full transparency, Speaker Yeager had mentioned adding an amendment on the floor, but that is nothing that has happened yet and not part of the bill that's presented today.
Then he should have been here to talk about it, huh? That's what he gets. Members, any questions? Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to get a little clarity around a form that exists currently that delineates each one of the fees and where it goes, so it's really clear. When you're the person that's paying an entry, you already know where each one of the portions of that entry fee is being allocated to, whether it's the nonprofit organization, the fee to actually participate. Is that correct?
Yes, and Chair, for the record, Michael Alonso, and to Assemblywoman Brown-May, yes, that's absolutely correct. Every casino does it slightly different, but what they call the form, but the form is there for two purposes. It's there to inform the player, the person that's going to pay the entry fees, what those fees are being allocated for, and it's there for the audit trail for the Gaming Control Board.
Members, any other questions? Not seeing any. We're going to get off lucky tonight. I'll ask you to take a step back, have a seat, and we'll invite anyone to the table that is here to testify in support of Senate Bill 266. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Virginia Valentine on behalf of the Nevada Resort Association, and I'm here to testify in support of the bill, and we appreciate your consideration. I want to thank the sponsor for bringing the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Erin Midby, Vice President of Government Affairs for Boyd Gaming, and I will just say ditto to what my colleagues have said, and we're in support of the bill. Thank you so much to Senator Pizzina for bringing it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in Carson City that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 266? Not seeing any. Not seeing anyone approach the table in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone joining us by phone that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 266?
If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 266, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. Then we will move to opposition. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 266? Not seeing any, not seeing anyone approach the table. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 266?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 266, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. Then we will move to the neutral position. Is there anyone that would like to provide neutral testimony on Senate Bill 266? Not seeing anyone here, not seeing anyone at the table in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone at all on the phone lines?
If you would like to testify neutral on Senate Bill 266, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. So with that, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 266, and we'll ask the presenters if you have any closing comments. Thank you for having us. Thank you. And members, we will open the work session for Senate Bill 266, seeing that there's no amendments presented here in our committee and no fiscal notes attached to this that would affect the legislation. I would accept a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Senate Bill 266.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, Assemblyman Hafen. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous of the members present. Moving on to the next item on our agenda. It is Senate Bill 368, and we'll invite Senator Harris to the table. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair, members of Assembly Ways and Means. My name is Dallas Harris. I represent Senate District 11. Thank you all so much for taking a little bit of your busy time to hear Senate Bill 368 today. I know this isn't the policy committee, but I just want to make sure you at least know what the bill does. And that is, it creates a process to remove some of the discriminatory language in the housing documents that you may sign as you purchase your house. That's often in the CC&Rs. But I don't know if you knew this, at a time in our history, properties were literally allowed to say you may not sell to a person based on X, Y, or Z. And so what we're going to do with this bill is create a process where you can go to a judge, ask a petition to direct the recorder to redact that language moving forward. We want to make sure we're creating a historical record, and so we're not going to go back. We want to make sure people know that that language was there, but if it offends you as a homeowner, you can file a petition, make sure that information is redacted moving forward on that property. Now, here's the really cool thing and why we're here in Ways and Means. There is a program at the University of Nevada, Reno, where they are mapping these restrictive covenants. They know exactly where they are. They're working on it right now. They're working on educating the community on the existence of these covenants, and if this bill passes, they will work on educating the community on how to proactively remove them. In fact, there is an interesting provision in this bill that would allow institutions like UNR and UNLV to file these petitions, especially since they already know where they are. And of course, they're going to have to notify the homeowner. They'll have an opportunity to object. But that's where the fiscal note comes in. Both the University of Nevada, Las Vegas and the University of Nevada, Reno are looking for $150,000 in each fiscal year in order to proactively remove these, document the history of the structural racism, provide education and outreach, and really what we're going to be looking at are salaries for professors and graduate students. It's a great educational experience. I've met some of the members of the team in UNR. It's cross-disciplinary, right? So they've got history students, they've got journalism students, all working together on this issue. With that, Chair, I also have Mr. Flores here, who might be able to answer some more questions about the program at UNR if you all are interested, but I'm happy to take any questions the committee may have.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Flores. If you could tell us a little bit about the program, what's going on at UNR, since we are being asked to place some money into it.
Michael Flores, University of Nevada, Reno. I think Senator Harris covered most of it already in the work that's already happening across the different disciplines around the university. And we're working closely with the University of Nevada, Las Vegas as well on this. I don't have detailed information of the research they've been doing, but I know they did meet with the senator and other members of the legislature around this work.
Good evening, committee. Sheila Bray with University of Nevada, Reno. One of the things that one of our programs is doing at UNR is really looking at the, as Senator Harris mentioned, the covenants that currently exist, and is doing some data mapping of those. And so then they're going into specific zip codes and areas that might have been built earlier on and really trying to pull those out so we can get those fixed. So there's already some current work being done, but this work would help expedite that and also partner with UNLV so that we're covering across the state.
Perfect, thank you. And we just got the amendment. Perfect timing. Members, it's coming around to you now. I'll give you a chance to look that over and then see if you have any questions for the senator.
And Chair, if I may, as it's being handed around, what you all are looking at is a conceptual drafted by legal that includes the appropriation and a couple of guidelines on what the appropriation would be used for.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, members, look over this amendment really quickly because by the sound of it, you all are going to be running down to finance, taking turns. So I'll need a quorum to do a work session. Any questions on the amendment? And by my understanding of the testimony and review of the amendment, we would need to amend into the bill the appropriated amounts for $150,000 in FY24 and additionally $150,000 in FY25. For UNR and UNLV? So it's not just 300,000?
Chair,
Go ahead.
my apologies. It should be 75 for each university in each year.
Thank you.
300 total over the biennium.
We will write in that difference now. Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I was just curious, how's this, you had mentioned that this $75,000 senator would be used for salaries, and I didn't catch how is that broken down, that 75? Is that salaries for the students also, or IT equipment? I'm just curious.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Assemblyman O'Neill, to you through Chairman Ro Moreno. We have a proposed draft budget that I believe was shared with committee members, but if not, I'll make sure that each one gets a copy. Yes, there is some faculty expenses as well as stipends for graduate assistants and undergraduate students as well.
Is it inappropriate for me to ask what those numbers are? Thank you. Could you break those numbers down for me, please?
Absolutely. You got it, Assemblyman O'Neill. Dallas Harris for the record, to you through Chairman Ro Moreno. So under the University of Nevada, okay, thank you so much. For the University of Nevada, Reno, there is one faculty course release for Professor Dorman. That's $22,895.50. For Professor Andrews, $26,626.50. There is one history PhD candidate, so you're looking at $22,800 times 0.10 in fringe, minus some salary savings. That would be $5,794.50. Journalism graduate student, is 19,200 times 1.05 for fringe minus salary for a professor. That'll be a savings of $1,760.50. They're going to share an undergraduate research assistant for $6,048. 5 research assistants would be $30,240. Two judicial assistants, $12,096. 1 shared history graduate assistant, $23,940. They were budgeting $4,968 for meetings with stakeholders and travel, $5,000 for consultants, $4,108 for web hosting, and then $10,000 for microfilm digitization. For the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, 1 faculty course release, $25,980. Another faculty course release for a different professor, $19,959.58. 2 history graduate assistants at $28,000. 5 undergraduate student research interns, stipend for them, $20 an hour at $32,000. 2 undergraduate community research interns at $20 an hour for $12,800. Partnership with a oral historian, which would be an in-kind contribution. Meetings with stakeholders and travel for them, $1,500. Local history consultants, $1,500, and then publishing costs of $1,500. And again, these are rough estimates of what a draft budget would be if we were to be funded.
My math didn't go all the way through, but it sounded like you exceeded $75,000 a year. But I assume this balanced out, so
Sheila Bray for the record. Thank you, Assemblyman. So it was one side was equaling out total 150,000 over the 2 years for UNR, and then the same thing for UNLV. So we can share it.
So you're breaking it down for the 2 years, not
We're
the
breaking it
annual.
down over the 2 years, but the work will be done over 2,
Okay,
if that makes sense. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? And we can get you a copy of the document that had those amounts on it, so that you will have it. All right? Any other questions for the presenters? And nothing else from you? All righty then.
No,
Then I'll
that's all.
ask you
Thank
to
you.
take a seat back, and I'll invite to the table anyone that is here to testify in support of Senate Bill 368.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Cadence Matievich, representing Washoe County, here this evening in support of Senate Bill 368 with an official position of support from our Board of County Commissioners. This was a very important issue to them. In fact, we had contemplated bringing this BDR on our own. And so we are very grateful to Senator Harris and would specifically this evening ask for your support for this appropriation for this program, ultimately getting the word out. There's education components in here, the word to the community about how they go about getting this language out of their property records will be important to carry it forward. We ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else here in Carson City to provide testimony in support of Senate Bill 368, and not seeing anyone at the table in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone joining us by phone that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 368?
If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 368, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. So we will move to opposition. If there are anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 368, not seeing any and not seeing anyone at the table in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone lines that would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 368?
If you would like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 368, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. So is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to provide neutral testimony on Senate Bill 368? Not seeing any and not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. BPS, Do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to provide neutral testimony on Senate Bill 368?
If you would like to testify neutral on Senate Bill 368, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. So we will ask the presenter if you have any closing comments. All right, seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 368. And members, if we'd like to work session this bill, we will have to add in the appropriations. And again, it would be $75,000 in FY24 to both UNR and UNLV, $75,000 each. And then again, in FY25 to both institutions for a total of $300,000. So with that, I will accept a motion to amend and do pass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to amend and do pass Senate Bill 368.
I have the motion from Assemblyman Watts, a second from Assemblywoman Peters. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimous of the members present. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda and open the hearing for Senate Bill 388. It revises provisions relating to certain public employees. And welcome Senator Scheibel to the table.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Melanie Scheibel. I am the State Senator for District 9, and SB 388 allows law enforcement officers who are employed by the state of Nevada to, in their collective bargaining agreements, bargain with their employers to have the employer pay part of their portion of the PERS contribution, the same as local jurisdictions are already able to do. And the purpose of the bill is to create more parity between the two and help to decrease the vacancy rate in our state law enforcement offices. There's no fiscal note on the bill. It simply allows for the bargaining to take place, and so it would be up to individual departments or agencies to budget for that accordingly, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? I have a question. My career was in law enforcement, and I appreciate the ability to bargain, but I now am here at the state, and we have to treat all of our employees the same. Could you tell me why just open this option up to only law enforcement, and if it was going to be collective bargaining, why not all state employees?
Thank you for the question, Melanie Scheibel, for the record, because we see a specific problem with law enforcement officers and agencies where law enforcement officers start their career at the state. They go through one of the state post academies, for example, with the Nevada State Police, and then they go to other law enforcement agencies, the local agencies, including those in our more populous counties. And one of the things that I myself, along with NAPSO and the Nevada Police Union, have heard over and over in talking to these individuals who have left state service to go to local service is that they're able to have the locals pay for their PERS. And it seems to be a very big factor in their decisions. And so the purpose of SB 388 is to eliminate that disparity and put the state in a stronger position specifically to recruit more law enforcement officers where we have a severe shortage.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation. Members, any questions for the presenter? Okay, not seeing any. I'll ask you to take a seat back, and we'll invite those to the table that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 388. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee and staff. Rick McCann, Nevada Association of Public Safety Officers, the aforementioned NAPSO, and the Nevada Law Enforcement Coalition. We are here, of course, in strong support of SB 388, and I will ditto everything that the fine senator has just said. I can't say any better, and it's late, and you don't want to hear me. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Brady Easterling with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. For the record, AFSCME is in support of SB 388. Thanks.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else here in Carson City to testify in support of SB 388, we will move to opposition. Is there anyone here that would like to provide testimony in opposition of Senate Bill 388? Not seeing any. Not seeing anyone at the table in Las Vegas BPS. Do we have anyone on our phone line that would like to testify either in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 388?
Testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 388. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. And coming back to Carson City, is there anyone who would... Hello. I should have looked up sooner. Are you in neutral or opposition?
Matthew Tutma, Deputy Director for the Department of Administration, neutral. We do have a fiscal note on this legislation for DHRM. Just on, there are two aspects to this fiscal note on the implementation of it. One relates to our current payroll system and implementing these changes on our current payroll system. In total transparency, this would be the costs of making these changes and these various changes in our current payroll system, which is the Advantage system. As the committee is probably no doubt aware of passing out AB 468, the Enterprise Resource Planning System appropriation. The plan is to replace the current payroll system during the next biennium, and so any changes associated with our current planning system may not be in effect related to that appropriation as well. The other aspect of this fiscal note is an additional staff member for DHRM due to this bill increasing the complexity of both collective bargaining as well as in the negotiation phase, as well as in the execution phase of adding an additional variable and mandatory bargaining subject that DHRM would be responsible for negotiating on behalf of the state as well as implementing. So I'm available for any questions.
Members, any questions? Not seeing any, but no, I'll do you. Hold on one moment. There is legislation moving through the body right now that was contemplated by this committee, joint committee, that would change PERS for all state employees. And we're hoping and praying and keeping our fingers crossed that it gets signed by the governor. And I believe there were fiscal notes attached with that legislation as well, correct? Do you remember? I don't off the top
Matthew
of my head.
Tutma, Deputy Director, Department of Administration. So no, we did not have a fiscal note attached to that legislation. One of the main reasons being is that change would be ubiquitous across all state employees. One of the caveats here would be that we would be adding different levels of potential compensation and different levels of benefits depending on the group of employees that we would be talking about. So it wouldn't be ubiquitous across all employees. So there's a level of complexity that DHRM would have to oversee and manage and communicate.
Perfect, thank you. Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. You partially got to where my question and the response. With this being just for law enforcement, would, in the complexity that you were talking about, does it damage any of the stability of PERS and put PERS at any risk? Because if I understand correctly, you would not be part of the bargaining unit, would you?
Matthew Tutma, Deputy Director for Department of Administration. So I would defer to PERS to be the authority on what would affect them. My reading of the legislation would be that there is an intention to fully fund the PERS contribution that's required for every filled FTE with this legislation. It's just a matter of how that's going to be done on an employee group basis. And so some employee groups could potentially have a lower PERS contribution, but also a commensurate lower COLA with this legislation. So there would just be different playing fields for each potential bargaining unit and what they could collectively bargain around. Of course, any of those agreements would have to go through the process of being approved through the Board of Examiners and being funded by the legislature in the future, but there's that potential for variance across all of these entities.
Thank you, Chair.
And if PERS could come up and just speak to how those changes would affect the PERS system, I would truly appreciate that. Good evening.
Good evening. Tina Liss, Executive Officer of the Public Employees Retirement System. This really would not affect PERS because the law already provides that when there is a contribution rate increase, the employee's portion can be paid either through a reduction of salary, which is generally what the state does, or in lieu of a promised pay increase, which is generally what local government does. So the statute already provides for this. This bill is allowing for the state employees to collectively bargain which of those two choices is being made. So it would not affect us. We get the same contributions in, and some employers already do it the other way.
Thank you. Before you leave, I think we have a question for you. Assemblywoman Kasama.
So just to clarify in the record, from our current system, this would not increase the employer's contribution, is that correct?
Tina Liss for the record. Essentially what it would do, it doesn't increase the employer's contribution, it essentially increases the employee's salary, because now the employee's portion is being paid not by a reduction, it's being paid in lieu of a promised pay increase. For instance, if there's going to be a 1% increase in our contribution rate, then the employee pays 0.5%, the employer pays 0.5%. Under the reduction, that 0.5% is a reduction of salary. Under the other method, the employer is essentially saying, well, we were going to give you a 0.5% pay increase, and in lieu of that, that's going to your portion of the contribution rate. So in essence, the employee wouldn't see the change for the contribution rate. Like I said, generally that's the way local government does it, but not always.
Follow up? Okay. Members, any other questions? All right, thank you so much. And we've gone through support, opposition, and neutral. I'll ask if you have any closing comments.
Thank you, Chairman Moreno. I just want to apologize for forgetting about my fiscal note. I hope you know that even if I thought I could get away with telling you there was no fiscal note when there was, I would never, ever do that. It's just been a long day with a lot of moving parts, and I have seen this fiscal note, and I did understand the request that they were making, and that it would kind of depend on what happened with that other bill and the funding for the information systems in total, as well as what goes on with other things in PERS. So I do think that it is a minimal impact to the bottom line for the general fund, but of course, nothing is free. So thank you for hearing my bill.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 388. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, we will open the hearing for Senate Bill 467. Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Shelley Hughes. I'm the Executive Director for the Department of Taxation, and I have with me tonight Joy Grimmer, ASO 4, and she will be presenting SB 467.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. Joy Grimmer, Administrative Services Officer 4 for Department of Taxation. SB 467 is a one-shot appropriation from the State General Fund to the Department of Taxation for the relocation of its Carson City office in the amount of $1,415,085. This concludes my testimony, and we'll be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much. Nice and short presentation. So just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, is this for the relocation to the Harley building?
Shelley Hughes, for the record, that is correct.
Okay. And because those fees were associated with the CIP and that approval, is this still needed because we've already passed legislation with the funding for the Harley building and another piece of legislation?
Joy Grimmer for the record. Yes, the funding would be needed to set up the office with cameras, security barriers, customer service windows. It would also be needed to relocate the furniture from our existing office that we've been in since 1995. We have to take the furniture out of it before we leave it. And then also relocate the cameras from there to the new location.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions? All right, not seeing any. Thank you so much. I will ask you to go ahead and take a seat, and we will ask anyone that's here to support Senate Bill 467 to come up to the table. Not seeing anyone here in Carson City or in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone lines tonight that would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 467?
If you would like to testify in opposition or neutral on Senate Bill 467, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. We will move to opposition here in Carson City. Is there anyone that would like to provide opposition testimony on Senate Bill 467? Not seeing anyone here or in Las Vegas, and knowing that we do not have anyone on the phone line, we will move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone that would like to provide neutral testimony on Senate Bill 467? Not seeing any. Any closing comments? All right. So with that, we will close the hearing for Senate Bill 467. And members, the appropriation is in the bill. We do not have to do any amendments, so I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Senate Bill 467.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Peters. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous of the members present. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, it will be Senate Bill 469. We'll open that hearing. 469 makes an appropriation to the Nevada Gaming Commission for employee training and registration fees for conferences. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mauro Marino, Vice Chair Bacchus, and members of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 469. For the record, I am Jose Torres, the Senior Research Specialist with the Nevada Gaming Commission. The Nevada Gaming Commission Chair Jennifer Tagliati asked that I share the following information with the committee. Senate Bill 469 seeks an appropriation of $17,680 to the Nevada Gaming Commission for employee training, registration fees, related to gaming conferences. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, the training category of the Nevada Gaming Commission budget was more substantial. Due to the impact of the pandemic, the funding was significantly reduced as travel and conferences were largely suspended. Senate Bill 469 aims to restore necessary funding to support training and gaming conferences for the Commission. In the past, commissioners have participated in key industry events such as the Global Gaming Expo and the UNLV International Gaming Institute's Conference on Gambling and Risk-Taking. As regulators of Nevada's gaming industry, it is crucial for the Commission to remain well informed about the practices and developments in other gaming jurisdictions. These training sessions and conferences offer invaluable learning opportunities. Thank you for your time, Madam Chair, and I'm available to address any questions from the committee.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Not seeing any. I thank you so much. I'll ask you just to hold up there. I don't think the room is full, so you don't have to move, and we'll move to testimony in support. Is there anyone here in Carson City or in Las Vegas that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 469? Not seeing anyone come to the table here. Do you have anyone rushing up to sit next to you there? No? All right. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 469?
If you would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 469, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. And moving to opposition, do we have anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 469? Not seeing any. Is there anyone that would like to provide testimony in the neutral position on Senate Bill 469? Not seeing anyone. So, do you have any closing comments before we close the hearing on Senate Bill 469?
No closing comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And with that, members, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 469. And seeing that the appropriation is in the bill and there's no amendments to be made, I will accept a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Senate Bill 469.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblyman Watts. Any discussion on the motion? Assemblyman Watts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Torres on a job well done. Congratulate you on your new role. Thank you for all of your service that you provided to the legislature previously, and wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman.
We have a motion on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. Moving on to the next item of our agenda, it's Senate Bill 475. Senate Bill 475 makes an appropriation to and authorizes the expenditures of money to the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation for the replacement of computer hardware and associated software. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. On behalf of this bill, I'm going to have, Josh Marhevka for the record, from Dieter. I'm going to have our CFO, Christine Nelson, present this bill.
Thank you, Deputy Director Marhevka. For the record, Chris Nelson. I serve as Chief Financial Officer for Dieter. Here this evening to present to you Senate Bill 475, which makes one-shot appropriations to and authorizes expenditures of money for the replacement of computer, hardware, and associated software pursuant to the EATS replacement schedule. Section 1 requests appropriations from the State General Fund in the sum of $8,840 for the Commission on Post-Secondary Education budget. Section 2, subsection 1 requests appropriations from the State General Fund in the sum of $19,907 for the Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation for the replacement of computer hardware and associated software. Section 2, subsection 2 requests authorization of $73,546 not appropriated from the State General Fund or State Highway Fund for the Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation budget for the replacement of computer hardware and associated software. And Section 3 requests appropriation from the State General Fund in the sum of $2,117 for the Nevada P20 workforce reporting budget for the replacement of computer hardware and software. And that concludes my presentation on this bill, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Members, do you have any questions on this, the presentation for these one-shot appropriations? And the appropriations were added in. You see them on the first reprint on the Senate side, so we will not have to do any amending to the bill here. Any questions for the presenters? Not seeing any. I thank you so much. I ask you to go ahead and take a seat, and we'll move to testimony and support. If there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 475, I ask you to come to the table. And not seeing any, and I think we lost the one person we had in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 475?
If you would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 475, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. So coming back to Carson City, do we have anyone here that would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 475? Not seeing any. And knowing we have no one in Las Vegas or on the phone line, we'll go to the neutral testimony. Is there anyone here that would like to provide neutral testimony on Senate Bill 475? Not seeing any. We'll ask the presenters, do you have any closing comments? All right, we will close the hearing for Senate Bill 475, and we will open the work session. Seeing that we have no amendments to make and the appropriation is in the bill on its first reprint, I will accept a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Senate Bill 475.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblyman Watts. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimous of the members present. Thank you. And with that, we'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is Senate Bill 480. Good evening. Seems like we've had a few nights together this week.
Yes, we have.
Welcome back.
You guys have had far more than I am, so thank you kindly for all you do. That being said, thank you for letting me present SB 480. James Settlemeyer, Director of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 480 is an appropriation of $14,967,394 for unanticipated shortfalls for the firefighting cost of last year and also the projection for the remaining costs for the rest of this year. That being said, we do have Casey here, who is the State Forester Fire Warden. If there are any questions, one of the things that was also recommended in the Senate, which we agree with, is the concept of an audit to see if we can get out of the practice of being too far behind on bills potentially, but also to make sure everyone understands the process of how the bills work. I stand for questions if you want, Madam Chair, or I could have the State Fire Marshal, Fire Warden have more discussion.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm kind of interested in the audit. I was surprised at how far beyond we are in getting money when we fight a fire. And so if someone could just speak to that, what that audit would do to improve would be great.
Thank you. James Settlemeyer, for the record, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources Director. A lot of discussion comes in when fighting fires, as you know, during legislative session, sometimes resources are scarce. And so sometimes they try to save a penny, in my opinion, by putting off the cost till a little bit later, and then, well, then we have to come back during the interim and ask for funds. But I'll let the Casey follow up with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Casey, State Forester Fire Warden for the Nevada Division of Forestry. There are a couple things. First of all, delays in bills. We pay for local government, federal government, all of the bills coming in, so that we have to get them in order to pay them. The other issue, which I've spoken to you all about before, is we start out with $4.5 million in our general fund bank account, but we spend about $20 million a year in firefighting. So we do actually get money back in, and all of these are reimbursables. So I have to pay everything up front in order to get reimbursed on the back end. So some of the delays in getting reimbursements are if I'm sitting on bills waiting for a contingency or a supplemental, I can't pay those bills until I get the funding in, then I pay the bills, then I can seek reimbursement. So there's quite a few factors in this budget account that make it kind of challenging. And a lot of our bills, we're actually very caught up on bills right now. We are as caught up as we've ever been. We have 6 people in our billing unit. Our billing, the online billing system is working, and local government is using it, and they're coming in a lot faster.
The issue right now for us is on the federal government side. They have very few employees, as everybody is faced with that challenge, and so payments are coming in much slower than we've seen historically.
And I just want to say thank you for what you do. You are an amazing asset to the state of Nevada, and he is very, very lucky to have you. Members, any questions? I'm looking forward to seeing the audit. So with that, I thank you both, and we'll move to support. If there's anyone here that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 480, I invite you to the table. Not seeing anyone here or in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on our phone line that would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 480?
If you would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 480, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. Then we will move to opposition. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in opposition? Not seeing anyone here, not seeing anyone in Las Vegas, we will move to the neutral testimony. Good evening.
Chair Monroe Moreno, members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I'm Shannon Rydell. I'm the Chief Deputy Legislative Auditor. As legislative staff, we don't advocate for or against any particular legislation, so we're here today to testify in the neutral position just regarding the audit that is required in SB 480. As you'll note in the fiscal note, we don't require any additional resources to perform this audit. It would simply just take the place of another audit that would have been performed on our audit schedule during the biennium. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them if I can.
I only have one question. If you had more staff in your division, would you be able to do all the audits that we're asking without putting off audits for another year, if you had the manpower?
Chair Monroe Moreno, Shannon Rydell, Chief Deputy Legislative Auditor. For the record, our audits tend to take a period of time, and depending on, kind of the makeup of our office in having more experience or less experience kind of dictates how well we can work through that audit cycle on any given biennium. I think we're adequately staffed at the moment to perform our audit cycle on a normal biennium. And I think the makeup between having less difficult audits and more difficult audits can, tend to determine whether or not we get through the whole cycle in a biennium or not. But I think at the moment we're adequately staffed. We have had some turnover over the past couple of years, and so we've continued to try to bring people on. And so at this point right now, we're just trying to get people up and running so that we can do audits as efficiently as possible.
Thank you so much. I don't think anyone else has questions for you, but thank you so much for being here tonight. I will ask our presenters if you have any closing comments before we close the hearing. All right. So with that, members, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 480, and seeing that the amounts are already appropriation amounts are already included in the first reprint of the bill, and we will not have to do any amendments on this side. I will entertain a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, move to do pass Senate Bill 480.
Thank you. I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Peters. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous of the members present. Thank you. Welcome back. We'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 492.
Thank you, Madam Chair. James Settlemeyer, Director, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 492 makes appropriation to the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for replacement purchases of certain informational technology, equipment, and things of that nature. They were following the State of Nevada Administrative Manual, the SAMS Manual, for the replacement information on technologies handled by the Enterprise Information Technology Services, EATS. Within that, as you know, certain computer software gets old and needs to be replaced. As far as vehicles, we're following the policy, which is if the vehicle's over 10 years old. Also, if the vehicle has over 100,000, if it's a sedan, trucks are 125, vans are 125, SUVs are 125. All of our vehicles that are being replaced within this are beyond those. We were asked in the other committee to look into the concept of fleet services. None of these vehicles are offered by fleet services because they're one-ton trucks, fire trucks, and things of that nature. One of the other major items that within here I think is important to pull out is a helicopter. What they're seeking to do is replace a helicopter that is 53 years old and has over 5,000 airframe hours and it was purchased military surplus from the federal government, and the federal government has red tagged it, meaning that if someone needs to be flown in it that's federal employee, they're not allowed to be in it. We're told, no, it's too dangerous for them to be inside of. The new helicopter is actually a used one, but again, it has actually cost us far less to run per hour because finding parts for a 53-year-old Huey is a little bit difficult. Sometimes they have to actually be manufactured. But that is the other major ticket items in here. For some reason in the past, it used to be that all the different departments that are within DCNR, all the different divisions, had their own one-shot appropriation. This time they decided to save you a lot of time by putting them all in one bill. But that is literally 8 divisions and 4 standalone programs that are replacing vehicles and equipment. And that is why the bill is so lengthy and unfortunately costly. I stand for questions at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Did you say that our helicopter is 53 years old?
We actually, State Fire Marshal could come up, she was at Tuscan, but they have 3 helicopters in the fleet. This is just replacing the oldest one, which they tend to not fly very often. I was lucky enough or unfortunate enough, either way I got to go do a little bit of flood investigation in the newest helicopter, which luckily is 2 years younger than I am, which isn't that young, but I'll leave it at that.
I'm glad you said it. Members, any questions for the presenters on Senate Bill 492? Thank you. Assemblywoman Peters.
I'm really glad to see this. It was stressing me out last session, and so I'm glad that we're able to look at this and hopefully move this forward.
Members, any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Thank you so much. Then I will ask for anyone who's here to testify in support of Senate Bill 492. Not seeing anyone here in Carson City and not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 492?
If you would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 492, please press star 9 now or raise your hand to the Zoom client to take your place in the queue.
Yes, I am calling in neutral, I guess you would say. I am all for them getting a new helicopter. Yes, please do. You shouldn't be flying around a 53-year-old bird here around Nevada. Agree with that. My only problem in making investments into certain information technologies, vehicles, and equipment would be anything that would involve any kind of weather modification or geoengineering or atmospheric alterations or any equipment that has to do with that level of conservation through some of the newer initiatives and stuff. I have a problem with anything really being invested into that, but I'm all for them getting a new helicopter and getting the equipment and everything that they need to monitor and censor and keep us informed on our, air qualities and different things like that. But I have to oppose anything that has to do with weather modification or geoengineering for reasons that I don't have time to present here. But I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to call in a neutral. Please get a new bird. Thank you.
Thank you. And could you give us your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Mai Sky Nomali.
Thank you so much. And thank you for calling in tonight. BPS, do we have any other callers?
Chair, there are no additional callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to provide neutral testimony on Senate Bill 492? Not seen any and not seen anyone in Las Vegas. And having our only caller on the line, I'll ask the presenters, do you have any closing comments? All right, so with that, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 492. And seeing that we do not have to make any amendments and the appropriation was included in the bill on the Senate side, I will accept a motion to do pass.
Second.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Peters, or second from Assemblywoman Hodeggy. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Members, moving on to the next item on tonight's agenda. It's Senate Bill 495, and we'll open that hearing. Senate Bill 495 makes appropriations to and authorizes the expenditures of money by the Division of Child and Family Services for the Department of Health and Human Service for the replacement of computer hardware and associated software, equipment, and vehicles for their deferred maintenance projects. Good evening.
Good evening, Melanie Young, Deputy Administrator for the Division of Child and Family Services. For the record, SB 495 makes appropriations and authorizations in the amount of $2,791,834 for expenditures for the division's deferred maintenance at all the facilities, information technology, equipment replacement, necessary software, vehicle replacements, and other various equipment and equipment purchases, equipment replacement and equipment purchases. Sorry. So instead of going through all 14 sections of the bill, I stand ready to answer questions.
Members, any questions? The bill was amended. You have the first print in front of you. It was amended on the Senate side to include the appropriations and authorizations necessary for passage. Any questions for Ms. Young? Not seeing any. Thank you so much. With that, we will invite anyone to the table that would like to provide testimony and support. Let's just go. If you're in support, opposition, or neutral here in Carson City, come to the table. Not seeing anyone. Knowing we don't have anyone in Las Vegas, BPS, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to provide testimony and support, opposition, or neutral for Senate Bill 495?
If you would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 495, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. Then we will ask the presenters if you have any closing comments. All right, not seeing any, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 495. And as I stated earlier, the appropriations and authorizations were included in the bill on the Senate side, so we do not have to make any amendments here in the Assembly. With that, I'll accept a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Bacchus, a second from Assemblywoman Hodeggy. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Moving on, we will open the hearing for the next bill on our agenda, and that's Senate Bill 498.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 498, as amended, makes general fund appropriations to the Division of Museums and History. There are several replacement pieces of equipment, computer subscription services, deferred maintenance, surge protectors, other replacement vehicles, and this was heard and it was amended in Senate Finance. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Members, do you have any questions concerning Senate Bill 498, which makes general fund appropriations to the Division of Museums and History? Not seeing any. Then we will move to support, opposition, or neutral testimony on Senate Bill 498. If there's anyone in the room that would like to provide testimony on Senate Bill 498, I invite you to the table. Not seeing any. And not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to provide testimony in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 498?
If you would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Senate Bill 498, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. Knowing that there is no closing comments, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 498. And seeing that we do not need to make any amendments, the appropriations were added into the bill on the Senate side, I will accept a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I move to do pass Senate Bill 498.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hodeggy. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimous. You took so long talking, you missed your window of opportunity. Okay, then we will go back. We thought you were going on the floor, so we were going to move past you to Assemblyman O'Neill, but he talked so much he missed his window of opportunity. I'm just saying. Members, we have a few bills that were added to the agenda. One was Assemblyman O'Neill's, and the other is Senator Neal's. So we are going to go ahead and open the hearing for Senate Bill 450. And Senate Bill 450 establishes a program for the relocation of persons residing in the Windsor Park neighborhood of the city of North Las Vegas.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, Madam Chair. It's late, Lord.
It's very late, and our mics on the end are very low. It's just the middle one that's really
I
good.
feel like, all right. So part of my testimony, I wanted to just show this 8-minute, and then you guys can ask me questions. Is that okay?
That'll be fine. Thank you.
All right.
Everybody knew who grew up over here about Windsor Park. It just became a neighborhood that was just kind of dying out. But I just knew that if it had been another community and they had not been black, they would have fixed those houses. The fact that they've been left to just die out rather than someone stepping in to help them.
It's just not right. I'm important, we're important, we paid our fair share, we paid our taxes, and we deserve to be treated better.
Fix up Windsor Park, clean up these vacant lots that the city owns, make it look like a livable community.
I wasn't thinking about it in terms of a justice issue. I was just thinking, why do they live in this house? And it's like a dead zone.
It's a very interesting story. Windsor Park was built in the early 1960s when segregation had not ended in southern Nevada.
No one should have to live as they've lived over the past few decades, and I hope we can find a solution for them.
The residents of Windsor Park all came here for the same reasons. For a future, their future, one they could build with their own hands. Yet below all the glittering lights, revolutionary singers, and high rollers, Las Vegas was just another city in America plagued with systemic racism.
And you're talking about the 1960s? It was almost completely segregated. African Americans at the time worked in the back of the house of casinos, doing maid work, porter's work, linen rooms, that kind of work. The dirtiest jobs went to African Americans, but they were jobs.
Subpar jobs also led to subpar housing options for African Americans.
So redlining is a practice that banks and lending institutions actually draw a red line around communities in a city that they don't want to loan money into. The West Side community, and I named the community because at that time that's the only place that African Americans could actually live here in the city.
Windsor Park was one of the first all-black housing communities built on the historic west side of North Las Vegas. It was an important step in giving African Americans a place in society.
Homes are the way that you get established. It is the way you build wealth. It is the way you create community. Home ownership is the underlying stabilizing force in our country. They tell everybody to become a homeowner. That is the American way.
My name is Annie L. Walker, and I'm a resident of Windsor Park. I've been living in Windsor Park for 50 plus years.
My name is Nancy Johnson, and I'm 65 years old, and I moved here in 1976. My daughter was around 2 months old when I moved here, And I was very excited with a new home, with a new baby.
My dad was stationed at Nellis, and things were a little rough in my marriage, and so he came and got me and three of my older children, and we have been here ever since, and have multiplied since then.
Oh, the neighborhood was fantastic. It was really nice. Everybody was so friendly. We all had Easter egg hunts with all the children. They would ride up and down the street with bicycles.
Then, 20 years later, something strange happened.
It's called subsidence. The houses were built in an area where there are geological faults. So imagine the ground has cracks in it, a fault. When the groundwater is drawn out, the ground sinks, but near the faults, parts of the ground sink more than other parts. So if your house is on top or near one of those cracks, your house cracks, pipes crack, roads crack. So it became very apparent to people who lived in Windsor Park in the 1980s, and they approached the city of North Las Vegas and said, our houses are cracking, we have cracks in the road, what can you do for us?
The Department of Housing and Urban Development conducted a study and estimated that between $12 and $14 million was needed to relocate the residents. But in 1991, the money for Windsor Park was reduced from $12 million to $5 million, with officials believing that this amount, quote, would allow Windsor Park families to reestablish their living conditions to the standard that once existed in Windsor Park, unquote. As of 2021, this has not been proven true. The battle over Windsor Park stretched out over 3 phases.
I came here about 4 years ago, and I never knew nothing about them vacant lots till later. She started telling me about, well, these used to be houses.
I stayed here because I didn't want to move. This is my home. I didn't want to start all over paying a mortgage. I had a little girl. The community was just dreaming about how it used to be when we first moved here. We were all happy until they started tearing down these homes.
The feelings of the residents began to change. Feelings of neglect. Feelings of despair. But the 1991 resolution to stop them from building or repairing their homes didn't make them feel surprised in the least.
We used to go to council meetings, complain about different things, the sewage and everything else. And we're gonna fix it, you know, it's always an excuse.
The city can help us if they choose to help us. They weren't supposed to tear down the homes in the first place. They were supposed to move the people out, fix up the property, and move them back in.
We want Windsor Park to be built up like it was 40 years ago. When my fiance first moved here. Like she said, Windsor Park was very nice.
You know how I come to the conclusion they said all of that to shut my mouth up. That's the way I took it, because they haven't done anything. They haven't done anything.
The situation came to a roadblock. No progress was made, and people were just sort of left in their houses, and I think they feel as if they've been abandoned.
SB 450 is about those last 90. It's about fixing, relocating those residents to another plot of land and then giving them the justice that they should have received back in the 90s. The 45 homes, which were part of Phase 2, are the reasons why those residents didn't move. They didn't move because they were poorly built 45 homes. In the Senate revenue meeting, I put in the record on minutes where their paint was peeling within 2 years. They didn't have a front yard. Their tub was peeling, and I'm assuming it was tub paint because I don't know how tubs peel. And this is all cited in the city council minutes. This bill allocates 12 million from our general fund and then 25 million in ARPA dollars. The 12 million that is general fund is set up so that the city of North Las Vegas would pay back the state over a period of 4 years. Because the original version of the bill had a different mix or a different arrangement. And the reason why we did it that way is because there was opposition from the city related to this bill, and then they came in support, but it was more like opposition. And I didn't feel that they would come up with the 20 million, and that we would have to wait even longer and then wage into a whole nother battle. And so we rearranged the bill and then put some protections in there for the residents around moving expenses. We were using the existing CBDG dollars that are left over in the city based on the hearings that we've had. They apparently have $2.6 or $2.7 million in CBDG dollars. Also in the hearing, I found out they have Fannie Mae dollars from 1998, which was supposed to generate $300,000 a year since 1999. Fannie Mae came in and bought general obligation bonds from the city. And so the expectation is that those funds will then be used, and hopefully we'll get some more transparency around those Fannie Mae dollars that we see in budget line items in their public budgets, but it's not actually clear how much is being generated from the Fannie Mae bonds. And with that, I'll open myself up for questions.
Thank you, Senator Neal, for the testimony and for the film presentation. Could you give me the numbers again that's in the CDBG and then the Fannie Mae?
So the Fannie Mae bond was a 1999 bond. So the city of North Las Vegas did a $4 million general obligation bond, and Fannie Mae came in and purchased it around, I would say, July of 1999. From the documents, it was supposed to generate $300,000 every year. From the current budgets up to 23, the 1998 bond is still cited in the publicly adopted budgets of City of North Las Vegas. So we know that it still exists. We're just not clear on how much money is being generated because year to year, it shows different amounts. In the Fannie Mae, and this is from the testimony in Senate Revenue, on the CBDG, because there are 3 budget accounts in their budget, the CBDG dollars, they said there's a total amount of 2.7. In the documentary, it said there was 5.4 million. I have documentation that it was 6.75 million, and then the additional money was generated from the bond. Which then actually equated to $14 million. So the expectation is that the Fannie Mae and the CBDG dollars that are listed in this bill will then assist for the moving expenses and restitution payments that are associated with these families. Because the last 90 should still be eligible for the 50K repay, the 50K relocation. However, because this would be a new property with new taxes, new home insurance, I specified in the bill that some of that 50 has to go towards that new tax payment, that new home insurance, because I don't want them to be in a situation where they can't afford it. So I need that money to revert to that. And I also, I'm kind of, I'm limiting the use. The other piece in here allows a 10K restitution payment to the 45 homes that happen to be, the colloquialism of the area is that these are baby Windsor homes, because those are the 45 that I established through city council minutes where citizens came to the city of North Las Vegas and reported that that their homes were built poorly, the paint, they asked them to go and talk to the developer that happened to be Dasco. And so if you see these homes, like in a regular home, the front doors face the street, right? Their homes, their front doors face each other. So you walk out and this is your neighbor's front door. And they said that the way that they built them that way because they said that the setback didn't allow them to build the homes appropriately where you would have a door facing the front. So they didn't end up with a front yard. They ended up with a smaller piece of property than what they currently have. So the current Windsor Park homes have like a 6,000 square foot lot, even though they might have a smaller home, like a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, but they were not given the equivalent size home. We know that we need 20 acres in order to move them. The idea is to move them as a census group. And the reason why is because there's still a family trying to find land that's close by because a lot of them still go to church. There's 2 churches in the area, Greater Faith, and then there's a church on Clayton, and there's CVT Magnet School, which is right on Cartier. And some of the residents have children that go to that magnet school. And so to disrupt them in entirety 3 decades later is probably not of interest. We have new residents who've moved into the neighborhood. Since we've had the hearing, they are a mix now of African American and Latino residents that live there. Latino families have moved in there because they were somehow duped and not told that these houses were not suitable. And what we've found out was that certain people lied about the inspections or the appraisal because they now have stories of their back walls falling down. One Latino resident, if she puts anything on her countertop, it slides. Recently, because the bill had been getting traction, I had a recent young mother who contacted me who purchased her house in November 9th of 2021. She found me from Defend Our Future, and I looked her up. She bought in Windsor Park, and she didn't know that it's called Winslow. So her grandmother was telling her it's Winslow Park, and these are the sinking neighborhoods. And it turns out that she got an inspection. She went through a home buyer's assistance program. She had a realtor. She sent me all of her paperwork that shows that she had an inspection, she had an appraisal, and somehow, I don't know how this happened, but she also got down payment assistance from the city of North Las Vegas, and she sent me the documentation. And there are HAP funds that were given to her of $15,000, where there is a second on the property, which basically the city would have to record the deed on that property because it prevents her from moving within 5 years or have to pay it back. And so I can't, this has been a journey for me. This has been a 3-year, the research was probably 4 or 5 years, but the action to working with Boyd Law, who is in this documentary, has been a 3-year journey. And it's just very important that we try to do something for these families so that new families don't keep moving into this neighborhood and then having no remedy and no way to really fix what's going on with their property. We see it, and the community has come together, and so this bill represents trying to offer that remedy.
Thank you. That was a lot, but I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly, that this mom that you spoke about purchased her home in Windsor Park in 2020 or 2021.
November 9th, 2021. I pulled her up on the assessor records. Her name is Laquana Sonier.
And in pulling up the records on that home, did you find any records that there had been any improvements to the land, to the home before the purchase?
No.
Members, any questions? We'll go to Assemblywoman Kasama and then Assemblywoman Bacchus.
Thank you, Chair. Kind of following up on your question there, you said the Latino family had moved in 21, and so I guess I'm confused. So So they moved in and now they've purchased a house that is not in good condition. It's got issues. So under real estate regulations, NRS 645, if a seller has intentionally withheld information or lied about the condition of the home when it gets passed on, the buyer has the right to go after the seller for treble damages. So these people should immediately be going after the seller who sold this house.
So, Senator Neal, thank you for the question. This is a person that called me 2 days ago, right? And this is actually an African American female. The Latino residents purchased 2019, 2017, 2015, and then even one purchased a home 15 years ago. She's the most recent. She's of interest to me because the HAP funds that were given to her from the City of North Las Vegas Down Payment Assistance Program has a habitability provision in it. And so because I know that it requires a recordation of the second on the property, you have to know which parcel it is and what neighborhood it was assigned to. She is a mom who works 2 jobs with small children. Finding this out, I then have not pressed her into a lawyer because I was trying to get her documentation. And I was like, can you send me everything? So she sent me her realty company. She sent me her email chain of who she worked through in order to down payment assistance. Then I went and checked the assessor records to make sure her name matched to the property so I could get a date. She bought it from a Latino family who clearly realized that this was not a good property and then sold it. It was sold for $224,000 to her. She now, within a year of moving in there, had to replace her roof. She has cracks. She has other things that were going on in the property, but she didn't know. She just thought, I can call my home insurance company and this will all be settled. And then they were told her that, these are things that you should have identified in your inspection, that when you had the appraisal, because I was like, well, did you have an appraisal? Did you have an inspection? And she said it was all digital. So I think that there is a deeper discussion there around how these homes are being sold and how they're being taken advantage of, and the knowledge that is in place. And I'll just leave it there.
So for every home that is sold, per our statutes here, there's a form called a seller's real property disclosure form, and that is a requirement in any transaction, and that has to be filled out by the seller. And if they withhold information or don't say that they've had settling issues or things like that, then that is something that can be pursued from the previous homeowner, and they are liable for treble damages for that. So that is, I would think, a first recourse. If people know that there's an issue with the home, they should be certainly following up on that on the seller of the property, because we already have regulations that kind of take that into account when these things happen. So just information.
Thank you for that. And I've kind of turned into a social advocate / legislator in this particular instance. So I will have to figure out how to direct her towards whatever her legal remedy is. But I think that I believe you and that she's squarely within a potential legal remedy. She called me because she was afraid that if she was to participate in this program, under the bill, that she would have to pay back the City of North Las Vegas for the down payment assistance that they gave her to move into the home.
Well then, and Senator Neal, also not everyone's in the financial position. If this home buyer had to use a program to help them be a first-time home buyer just to get into the home, I'm sure they may not have that, the other assets sitting in a bank account or a trust account or a bond that they could, cash in to pay for an attorney to fight for their rights, and not knowing even what their rights are, and not knowing that they were moving into what I would call a sick home, a sick neighborhood. So sounds like Assemblywoman Kasama could be, their advocate to help out the neighbors and that community. Assemblywoman Bacchus, you had a question?
I did. Thank you so much, Senator Neal. I actually watched the video and I think your first presentation of this and was moved by this project. I was just kind of thinking of the logistics, and I mean, unfortunately, a lot of these people, unlike Missoula, probably statute of limitations have barred any claim for them to bring an action against the prior seller, just because it sounds like a lot of them have been there for many years. And then also, I know with these cases, unfortunately, someone having to hire an attorney, usually it's hourly and it's kind of impossible. So I have two questions. One, I was trying to think if there needed to be an amendment on this with respect to addressing the situation of dealing with that second on there, and I wasn't sure because I started thinking if the HAB funds were like linked to like federal funds, and I saw that as a headache, but if it was paid off, then I guess that would be removed.
So, Senator Neal, I actually did deal with it before this came over. It's dealt with in this bill. I'm trying to figure out where legal added it, but we added in a provision that if they had any down payment assistance, how it would have to be handled, because the conversation was that I can't deal with all of the issues, but I tried to protect at least what I knew, and also any of the corporate entities that may exist over there, because since this bill has come about, I've also had calls from realtors who are, or I don't know who they are, but they're claiming that they're a listing agent for a potential property and then saying that they own a property and their name doesn't match to the assessor record, and saying, is the city then going to sell these predators, basically? And so I've also put in the bill to guard against them ever coming in and believing that there's a remedy for them, because it will not exist. And also any provision in there related to, because we know that some of the homeowners have rented their houses to family. And so I have the protection in there that you also have to be able to produce either that city council record related to you either being initially a part of the set, or your assessor record, your deed, will, anything that's associated with a trust or estate showing that your relationship to this property. And so trying to just guard against what ended up happening after I presented this bill. People are interesting and very predatory.
And then I noticed in here there was already another property which was specific in here, that was being considered, and I didn't know if that was like really available. And I know like with North Las Vegas throughout, there's a lot of weird soil stuff going on out there in North Las Vegas. So hopefully, I saw that you even provided conditions in here for engineers to make sure that the land that they build on is adequate for the homes. And I trust your math. I'm sure the money that you put in here is going to be adequate to cover all those costs. I don't know if you talked to a builder.
So I did, and that's why the sewer and the sewer power, making sure that the certain services are transferred over with the property, so it doesn't like these, because those could be tens and thousands of dollars that would add up in the transfer. We try to cover anything that he was mentioning, like, getting the easement, the right of way to go onto the existing properties, trying to do anything that we can to eliminate the roadblocks. Clearly, this is not, whoever the developer is this is not going to be a profit gain, right? This is going to be a goodwill gain. And so, and that's very important. And so I trust the Division of Housing in order to do this right. We're also, if, you guys see in the will to move this out, we'll look at other federal funds that we can tap onto this. But the idea to take the general fund and the ARPA dollars was to try to have the remedy happen faster than having to continue to go through a battle and a fight that I don't know if I have the bandwidth to do it. But my goal is, I don't want Miss Annie Walker, who's in the video, her church is Greater Faith Church. She was one of the original residents where her husband's park is right by Greater Faith Church, because he helped to build that church. And so my interest is to make sure that she is still alive by the time this remedy comes about.
Thank you. Assemblyman Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing this forward with the passion that you have. Greater Faith is a church that my granny went to my entire life until, well, not my entire life, but a good portion of my life. I spent a lot of my Sundays at Greater Faith and other days, because that was back when you went to church a lot of the days of the week. But I'm curious to know about, one, do we have any information on the lenders or the type of lenders and loans that have been given to the more recent buyers? Because I imagine that probably traditional lenders are maybe not lending, on these properties, because there probably are some issues when they go back and they do their title searches and all of those things that are required to close, to ensure that the property is, a safe investment, so to speak.
So, Senator Neal, for the record, that's what's disturbing about the whole story as we unravel and find out more, because the 2021 resident, she did get a loan. She was literally qualified. She sent me her paperwork. And so I don't understand how it's happening. What I keep hearing are they're potentially young realtors who are making their first buck off of these homes. That's what has been the common trend. Because that's the only thing that makes sense, that someone is literally taking advantage. And that's how I ended up at the law school in the first place, right? I ended up going to Boyd Law because I was looking for a legal remedy. I was saying, I can't do this by myself. I need someone else who's going to help me figure this out. We talked about the statute of limitations. We talked about the different ways that we could figure it out. And I kept saying, well, there must be a nexus, right? There has to be a nexus. Maybe the nexus is tied to the fact that the original federal money still exists from the 90s. And that because that money still exists, maybe, there's a way to tie this to what didn't occur right. And then they were like, let's look and see if we can find an attorney who would take it on, pro bono. And we called a few. We had some law school interns who assist. We still have 2 law school interns who are assisting. And we haven't found anybody who was interested in taking this on the lender piece side of it. I think that I think people are watching this to try to see, okay, if this bill comes out and we start compiling more documentation, that I think, I'll have a little bit more time in order to try to produce that as a pathway for people, because I really do believe that we'll have to hand that to them, right? And so I've done 50 years of research on this project. And because I've been up here, I haven't had time to just do the data collection that I normally would do, which is go around, gather, and then, have all of the documents and then compile them and then produce and then sit and say, all right, let's take this class and then try to figure out how to deal with these recent homeowners, because I do think that there is a different legal remedy for them. And I feel that, I don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, I feel like I've taken on a fight that has put me out there, but I'm determined to go the distance. I just need the time, right? Not in this building, to do my data gathering and research that led me to the 50 years that I collected, because they have it. And I've told them, don't throw anything away. Please don't talk to anybody that we haven't designated for you to talk to. Like, if it's not these set humans, do not give them any information, because people are just popping out of the woodwork, and I'm just like, who are you and why are you even associated with this? And so we're trying to guard these residents as much as possible, and tell them these are the only trusted individuals who you should be having a conversation with.
Chair, I have hopefully 2 more questions if you'll allow them. Okay, so on the, just for a point of clarity, if I remember correctly, was there a period of time that they were not lending to borrowers in this particular in Windsor Park?
Yes, they were redlined. These homes were redlined in 1989 from the legislative minutes. So the North Las Vegas came. This was during the period of Theron Goins, who was at the time city council. They came to the legislature in 1989, 1990, and I believe 1992. And in those legislative minutes, there was a guy named James Hobby that said that the homes had been redlined, the home insurance had been arbitrarily canceled for all of the homes, and that the families were left without a remedy because their homes started to sink because the groundwater was removed. And what we found in the research, or what I found in the research, was that there was never an engineering study done. There was never a geological study done for the area, so they didn't know that they built on the fault line, right? So you saw in the documentary, it was one of the first African-American neighborhoods right after the Fair Housing Act was passed. And so here they come building these homes, and they didn't know it was on a fault line. So when the groundwater was removed, it started to sink. There was a period where they started to do a recharge, right? In the, I think it was around 2000. And then they realized that the removal of the continuing to recharge, which started to lift the homes for about an inch, that they still needed to keep the water in Lake Mead, so they continued to draw the water out, which then continued to exacerbate this particular homes because they're on a hill, right? And so everything started to sink. The sidewalks started to crack, the streets and everything, and then all of their homes started to separate. The foundation started to separate from the walls. And that is the condition that the current 90 are in, and they only stayed because they just continued to fight for the best remedy that they didn't want what the 45 homes got.
Yeah, thank you. So for my last question, well, it's kind of now something else you said made me think of something. Well, so as it relates to like the loans and the lending and the titles and all that kind of stuff, and maybe our resident real estate expert could help provide some clarity there. It seems like if they were at one time redlined and not being lent to or provided, loans on, that there would be some history associated with the title or whatnot of the properties that should come up in a proper title search. I imagine. I don't know for sure, but that's just kind of how it works for me. So I'm gonna, so that I don't take up any more time,
Okay.
we can move on. Somebody can address that piece. But then my next piece is about the habitability inspection that you mentioned for the new loans, the home assistance program. So if there's any information that could be provided in like what is entailed in that habitability study that would have potentially revealed whether or not these homes were actually safe.
So, thank you for the question. I'm waiting to get a copy of that appraisal, right? And that inspection report. She sent me her award letter. She sent me the email chains, And I told her to go find her documentation because I was just like, we really need to understand. And then I had it looked at by another agency to see what are the conditions associated with this home buyer assistance. And that's when I found out that there was a habitability provision associated with that home buyer assistance because it comes from federal home funds. But it was very specific to North Las Vegas, and it was run from North Las Vegas. It didn't come from any other agency. And so that's why it's of interest to find out what additional information was provided to her because she went through counseling. I saw the paperwork. And I was just like, how do you go through counseling and no one check and find out whether or not the house that you're moving into? And so there was a confusion because her grandmother was saying this is Winslow Park. So the colloquialism is Winslow Park. She was saying it's Windsor Park. And her grandmother was like, nope, it's the same neighborhood. But she was thinking it's not. But it was, and it is.
Thank you. I know we have the actual city in the room, so maybe they could provide some more information on the habitability piece when they come up. That's it for me. Vice Chair Bacchus, have you taken over?
I've secretly taken over.
Thank you.
Stealthily, I should say. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Dickman.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you, Senator Neal. Not being an attorney, I hope I can ask this question in a way that makes sense, but in section 9.7, where it says it's unlawful to sell or list for sale any real property intended for occupancy as a residence when this bill becomes effective, I'm just wondering, could it be a taking of property? Like...
So,
by the state?
Yeah, thank you for that. Senator Neal, for the record. Number one, this is considered a special act. Number two, the movement, number one, we have the power as a state to do a taking, right? That's established. However, this particular provision is to prevent any new residents moving in there so that the class remains finite. The particular home buyers that are there now, no one else should be moving in. And the more individuals are able to sell this property, the more that class is enlarged, which creates a further problem, right? And to deal with, and I don't think you guys have legal on this committee. My brain's not solid enough right now, but I know that as a state, when we take a public policy position, I don't think limiting the ability to sell the property to someone else we're moving in a public policy position and police powers for safety at this point, for the health and safety of these particular families. And so that's one legal position. The second is we do have the power under, I believe, I don't know which statute it is, but we do have the power to do a taking, but it has to be with fair market exchange. But these particular residents, it would be a voluntarily move. It's just that I've spent enough time with them that they do want to move, right? There was a time where they did not want to move, right? They wanted to continue to fight. They wanted to continue to stay there. But after the past, well, now I guess it's 3 years of, dealing with trying to find a developer, trying to find a remedy, and the decision was made that we probably have to pick another route than you continuing to want to fight with the city over to rehabilitate your home. And the largest concern for me was when during COVID-21, one of the residents, Pastor Miller, he was the one, he would go around and he would put blocks underneath the residents' homes to keep them from falling. And he passed away. And that's when I realized that I didn't want to lose anybody else. And that as much as I could go for another 10 years, they can't. And so I had a conversation with them and I said, here's what I think is probably the best thing to do. And they agreed. And I said, I cannot withstand another person passing away. And just yesterday, Miss Walker's daughter passed away. And I am not interested in continuing to fight my own city for these individuals. And I have a lot of strength, I have a lot of passion, but what I don't have is time. I don't have it. And they don't have it. And the city has tried to make the argument, it's these weak, ridiculous arguments. Well, you know, Senator Neal used to fight for them to stay. I did what they asked me to do. I was an advocate for them because that's what they asked me to do. When a developer was going to build on 86 acres, and they were asking the question, how can someone come in and build a warehouse, but you can't build a 1,500 square foot house? How is science good for them and not good for a 1,500 square foot house? Because they were talking to the developers and having meetings with them, and the developers were saying, well, science has changed. We can do flexible foundations. We can do things that prevent the house from falling. And so the residents decided that they would make the argument at a city council meeting and a couple of city council meetings that this is the argument that they would like to push. And I said, fine, because it was completely logical. And it made sense. However, that was in 2019. We're now in 2023. And it's just that simple. Sometimes advocacy shifts. That doesn't mean that I am somehow reclassifying my position. My position has always been to advocate for what they want and advocate for what they tell me they want. And that's it. I've served them since 2011. But I knew as a freshman coming in this building, this lift, this bill that's in front of you, there's no way I would have gotten that bill out. And I had to build a record, which I did. I spent years collecting this information from Congress, from the state, and city minutes to build a record so I could come in here one day and make this argument.
Thank you. I can see that your heart is really in this, and I feel so bad. I hate to even ask these questions, but well, I was just wondering if anyone knows for sure if this is an authorized use of ARPA funds.
I can answer that question. Senator Neal, for the record. So one thing is for sure, I do my research. These ARPA funds are eligible. You can buy vacant land with them. You can also use it for housing. Trust me that I went to the Division of Housing, spoke to Director Reynolds, spoke to Steve Acroft. We looked up the law, we looked up the statute, and we determined that I could use either pot. However, If you would like to see that information, I can forward it to this committee. I didn't bring my laptop up here, but I'm sure I can find it in my phone and I can forward you the exact response. I have to tell you something, Assemblywoman Dickman. If I'm going to do this kind of move, I'm not going to come light. And I'm certainly not going to come unresearched. Why? Because I'm not going to come to a problem where I am going to create a deeper problem for a solution that I thought I wanted to have. And I think that you've only known me for a short period of time, but I do my research and I try to make sure that I'm solid when I do move. And that's why I came with 50 years. And if you would like to see any of the research that I did not put in the record in Senate revenue, I have a stack.
Thank you. I wasn't questioning you. I was more trying to understand, but thank you. And thanks, Chair, for the questions.
I think we have Assemblyman Hafen next.
Welcome back, Madam Chair, and thank you. And Senators, it's always good to see you. I appreciate the amount of work that you went into with this, because I too have seen soil issues in my district, especially in Pahrump. We have homes that are literally collapsing in the middle and running into very similar issues. And in my day job, I have caught subcontractors cheating and causing subsidence issues all over the place. And so my question is just going to be hopefully a simple one, is why are we going to limit it to just one area of the state in this one neighborhood rather than leaving it open for other municipalities' possibility to apply for these ARPA funds to address similar issues?
Thank you for the question. Number one, the particular issue of subsidence, and there is a geotechnical report that was done, and there was also more than one neighborhood that was affected by subsidence. There is also documentation that one of the other neighborhoods that was also built on a fault line has also had a remedy and was condensed and changed into a smaller area. They now have a golf course, and they now have homes that are not in anywhere close to the shape of Windsor Park. Windsor Park in particular has been left in this particular condition since 1999, roughly. They claim that the last move was in 2007. I haven't seen that actual document that said that last move happened in 2007, but this is a special act for this particular neighborhood that has suffered from subsidence and that has not been given the appropriate remedy, and the families are still living in a certain condition. And I know that, and I'm going to say this, because I know that one of the arguments that is constantly played is that why them? Why this particular group when other people are in need? I think that there's no way on 2 days before we're getting out of here, or maybe never getting out of here, that we could, that I could have came and did the full record that I did in Senate revenue. But I would suggest that you watch that hearing where I laid out an hour and a half of minutes from 1966 forward, because I think that helped to establish the position on why this neighborhood and why not any other neighborhood, and why this particular issue and the argument of saying, well, there's bad soil everywhere. Well, if that's the case, then why are they still popping up new neighborhoods everywhere? And why are they still building homes in other places? Because at the end of the day, these 90 need this remedy. They're not sitting on the sidelines manipulating anyone. They have decided, because they trust me, to bring this forward on their behalf. And that's it. So whatever is flirting out there in terms of trying to reduce the necessity or say, you know, she's doing some special act. It literally is a special act. That's what it is, and we have the authority to do that outside of general law, and that's what's happening.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator Neal, for that statement. Yes, this bill was brought for this neighborhood, right? It wasn't brought for every neighborhood in the state of Nevada. And each and every one of us, when we see that there's an issue within our district, we have a responsibility as elected officials to address that in legislation. And we can expand it outside of our districts. But I think collectively, and we've done this in some other legislation that we've passed out of this committee, once we know of an issue that's happening anywhere in our state, we have a responsibility to deal with that because now we all know about it, right? As elected officials, whether we were there and responsible for how the condition is now, how it got there, well, now we know about it, we have a responsibility to take care of it. And this bill is targeted for this neighborhood, for this problem. And then we can come back next legislative session and bring other legislation to address the other problems throughout the state. But today we're just talking about this issue. Going next to Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for the passion and all the research. My question has to do with a very specific item on Section 11, page 7. Is the amount of time given to have the money given to people, if it were to go through, is this enough time? And if not, is there any way that there's a possibility, I don't see it in the language, but if there is a need for more time, is there a way to possibly ask for that extension through IFC, or how do you envision that? Just because that's one thing I'm a little bit concerned about is making sure that everybody gets the means that they should have.
Thank you for the question. The bill does allow for quarterly reports back to IFC. We have discussed this within the Division of Housing that what we would need is a very sophisticated developer in order to move this forward within that timeline, who is well established and knows what to do. And so there is a strong belief that we'll be able to identify that person. If not, we should be able to go back to this actually provision puts us right before the next session. And so we should be able to come back and make some kind of adjustment around this reversion language.
Thank you for that clarification, and thank you, Chair. And again, thank you for your passion.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Neal, I've known you, and actually I knew your father too. I can hear your passion on this issue, and it's really very interesting. It's actually very upsetting to me too personally to hear how this situation has evolved and, to me, continue to get worse. But I want to ask about a specific area. I was reading through the bill, and Assemblywoman Anderson will probably key in on this. We were discussing it regarding another bill, but on page 6, I got a section 9, 3A and B about descendants. We were talking on this other issue about how far does that descendancy go. You could have descendants that never knew the family member that lived there, was never involved, never damaged by the actions there, and it could be the family grows. I mean, out of my wife and I, we now have 4 children, 6 grandchildren, and that will keep expanding over the years. So that's why I was just curious about, because you talk about $10,000 to the person who was the initial occupant, no argument, or to the descendants of that person, and as I said, the family keeps growing. I was just wondering if you could help me understand that part.
So, thank you for the question, Senator Neal, for the record. I think the limiting factor is you can be a descendant, but if you have no right to the estate, you are therefore limited. You have to at least have, you know that you can transfer property by deed, you can transfer property, you could have a life estate, you could have given, it could be held in trust. You also could have provided the property by will. That is the limitation for a descendant. We also know that there are living persons who have their nephews or sisters or brothers living in the property. We also know that some of the families have passed away, and when we looked at the assessor records, it's under a trust, a family trust, meaning that they kept the property, but they kept it under the name of the family and in the trust. So that's the limitation. There's not going to be, you know, cousin Bobo coming from the side corner talking about, well, I think that, you know, my family. No, you have to be able to provide some documentation that you have relationship to this property. This is not random.
That's what I was curious about, and so you answered, and I really appreciate that. And like I said, I appreciate your passion on this issue too, because it's an abuse to me that these people have. And if I may just ask one last question, how come this property hasn't been condemned already? You said that it was recently, nobody's allowed to purchase now, but that sounded like it was just in the last couple of years. To me, it should have been years ago these houses were sinking down and falling down, that it should have been condemned.
I think it ties back to the question that Assemblywoman Dickman mentioned. The residents still live there, right? They were not willing to move. And so the only way that they could come in and move them out is by either the voluntary movement, which is what this bill is still doing, or they couldn't just buy them out and take them out. I know there was a threat potentially, but they pretty much held together and continued to just go to city council meetings and continue to advocate for themselves. And they kept hoping that something would change, that somehow either rehabilitation would occur or the proper relocation would occur. And so those things never happened, but they continued to advocate exactly for those things.
I appreciate that, I truly do, and thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions? Do you have a question? Okay, this will be our last question. Assemblywoman Kasama, so we have to get back to the floor.
Okay, I know we do. Thank you. I'll try and just keep it brief. One, there's so many issues here with starting from when the community was first developed, with geological and then opportunities were given for people to move and they didn't take it, and now we have people that are there. But I just have a couple kind of detail. It's kind of my mind how it works with real estate, but it's kind of a little confusing to me where we're talking about building new homes for them and then people can move there. But then we have a $50,000 restitution, one layer, and then there's a $10,000 rehabilitation. But why would you use $10,000 for rehabilitation if you're going to be moved to a new home? And then you've got moving expenses, but there's no cap or control, or is that part of the 12 million, the moving expenses come out of that? And I just have kind of several areas of concern. And then some of these homes have a mortgage on them, and probably some are paid in cash. And then there's sections in the bill that says the loan will be paid off. But then doesn't that create a disparity for somebody who owns the home free and clear, and then for somebody you pay off the loan and then they both get a new house? It just seems like there's more tightening up to do, so to speak.
So Senator Neal, for the record. So number one, the 50,000 applies to the 90 that happen to be in Windsor Park. So there was a 50,000 that was offered for the relocation in the initial CBDG dollars, and that's where this applies. In sub B on page 6, that applies to the 45 homes that are associated with Baby Windsor that I mentioned, which are listed in the documentary. So those particular homes were the ones where the paint was peeling in 2 years, where they went to the city council saying that the developer, Dasco, who built these homes, built them poorly. So there's an entirely different subset of individuals related to that. The moving expenses are, that will all come out of the 12 million. And the reason why, a lot of the residents outside of the new ones, they're either 60, 67, up to 86 years of age. So to say that you will go ahead and, you know, I'm going to say, go get a moving truck and you're 80, I just think that it just made sense to offer moving expenses. The provision that's on sub 4, that's transferred from the housing division for still applied to the rehab, if you see that, it's all attached to that CBDG dollars. And so I don't think it's a tightening, because we know that there's also going to be regs. You can't prescribe every single piece, but it's very clear what my intent was, and there were 2 groups that are a part of this conversation. The Baby Windsor group, that's the 45 homes, and then the 90. And so Division of Housing will be able to take this and then establish the program. We know from the assessor records there are 38 mortgages. We don't know the range in which those mortgages are, whether or not they have $5,000 left on the mortgage. We know that some of the new homes where they purchased it for, you know, maybe $115,000, or the latest where we find out that she purchased it for $224,000. It will have to be a special mortgage program. The ones that have a mortgage, that mortgage is not going to be relieved. We can't do it. What we have to do is recreate that mortgage on a new property and have them pay that off. There is no intention of somebody who has an existing mortgage saying, well, I no longer have a mortgage. You will have a mortgage. It will just be a special program that has to be created within the Division of Housing. And they have the expertise to do that because they have several mortgage programs within the Housing Division.
See no other questions. Thank you, Senator Neal, for the presentation, and we will open up for testimony. If there's anyone here that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 450, I invite you to the table. And you can go ahead.
My name is Aisha Goins, Aesha Goins. I'm here on behalf of the Nevada, I need to say that differently. I'm here on behalf of Las Vegas, Nevada NAACP. We fanatically stand behind and support Senator Neal, and we appreciate her bringing this bill here. And we also emphatically support the community of Windsor Park, Winslow Park. I have told this story, but I'm going to just tell it briefly. When I was in foster care, I was in junior high. I lived in Winslow Park, and as crazy as it's going to sound, this is those times where some of the most fun and loving times of my life. I look back on those days, and I'm still friends with some of those persons, and I just want to impress on you of a time when that neighborhood was thriving and full of life, and children and youth were fulfilling the future and becoming our ancestors' wildest dreams. And I also want to impress on you that the young lady that she is talking to, that NAACP has, we have an executive board, and one of the executive committee members has been talking to Laquana, and he himself is appalled. I don't know anybody named Paul, but you know, he's appalled that there is a loan on this, a $225,000 loan, and then a second mortgage that was given to this young lady from North Las Vegas. He is helping her collect the data to position her so that she can sue. But, you know, to even have bought a home just 2 years ago and having to had replaced the roof, had an inspection done, and went through escrow and being positioned in a place where she has a $225,000 loan. Yes, I've said that twice because I just want everyone to know these houses are sinking, and the resale was $225,000. And Senator Neal has had to bring this up more than once, more than twice, consistently asking for restitution for these citizens. I feel like they are waiting for them to die off, and that is super unfortunate because now Senator Neal has had to come up here within this session and announce that someone absolutely has passed. I am urging, begging, pleading that this committee and this chair takes this into consideration and moves this bill forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Constance Brooks, proudly representing University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And while this is a very sad instance of injustice within our state, this is a beautiful example of how UNLV stands ready to help solve some of Nevada's challenges, especially those that have historic injustices. And so we are grateful to Senator Neal for this wonderful opportunity for our staff, our faculty, and our greatest asset, our students, being able to be involved in such a rich learning opportunity and to be able to provide justice for those who certainly deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Cassie Charles, and I'm the campaign director with the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. We're here in support, and we would like to echo the testimony of Ms. Goins from the NAACP, and we sincerely would like to thank the bill sponsor for championing this much-needed and long overdue policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing anyone else here in Carson City to provide testimony in support, and not having anyone in the room in Las Vegas. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone lines that would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 450?
If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 450, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Quentin Savoy. That's Quentin. Last name S like Sam, A like Apple, V like Victor, WOIR. I'm coming to you this evening as president of the Las Vegas NAACP to echo the sentiments of the vice president. We fanatically stand behind Senator Neal and the residents of Winslow Park. I want to add this to the conversation. Alongside our friends at Plan and Make the Road Nevada, the NAACP took about 30 people to the North Las Vegas City Council meeting as they were discussing and approving their budget. And what we did at that meeting was to articulate our concern about there not being any line item in the budget for them to account for how they would make whole these families in Winslow Park. And without making any assumptions about anyone's intention, it wasn't met with the level of urgency that you've heard here tonight from Senator Neal, the passion that she's demonstrated. It was a very flippant response, and I am deeply worried that if this body doesn't take action, then this will continue to get glossed over. So I want to shout out our friends at Plan and Make the Road for standing in solidarity with us that day. I would also add this, as an organizer, it's very hard to get people to believe in the movement because government doesn't show up as tangible for their lives. This is a way that we can show tangibly how government is still working and protecting our communities and our interests. I urge your support. Thank you so much for the time this evening.
Thank you. Next caller.
My name is Chandler Cooks. On behalf of representing the NAACP. I want to start by thanking Senator Neal for being a fearless leader, not allowing the opposition to overshadow progress and fighting for the sustainable solutions for our community. It's very disheartening that the city of North Las Vegas did not commit to allocating any funds for this community A move as such would have been justice, fairness, and a real investment in the city's growth. Unfortunately, that was not considered in our future budget, but here we are. And I strongly support this legislation. And I urge that each of you stand tall with the people and support the change this transition and community needs. One quick comment on that descendancy piece. This issue has far exasperated for these families far enough. So please understand how just one generation of living in this neighborhood changes the wealth trajectory of their families for generations to come. So the clock is ticking. As you see, the community is watching. So please continue to show us your leaders of integrity by supporting SB 450. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Matthew Wilkie, W-I-L-K-I-E for the record. I live only a few miles up the road off of Highway 50, many, many miles from this community, but I can't imagine what the people of this community have gone through, and I'm just calling in support, and I urge the committee to do so as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next caller.
Good evening, Madam Chair and the rest of the committee. This is Dora Martinez with Nevada Disability Pre-Action Coalition. I want to thank the Senator Neal for her passion and hard working, and we love her and we're cheering her from the side, and we urge you to please vote yes and support this bill, and thank you. Have a safe night.
Thank you. Next caller.
Chair, there are no additional callers on the line.
Thank you so much. So coming back to Carson City, is there anyone here that would like to provide testimony in opposition of Senate Bill 450? Not seeing any, and not seeing anyone in Las Vegas, BPS. Do we have anyone on the phone line that would like to provide testimony in opposition or neutral on Senate Bill 450?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone here in Carson City that would like to provide neutral testimony on Senate Bill 450? Not seeing any, and not having anyone in Las Vegas, and knowing there's no one on the phone line, I'll ask the presenter if you have any closing comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the Assembly Committee on Ways for, number one, having this hearing, having it late at night. We're all running the midnight hour, and for just trusting me with this policy that I'm just trying to do the right thing, and that, in all honesty, if any of you guys have known me forever, that I've just really tried to be real consistent, and I hope that you guys can find it in your wisdom to move this policy out, and that allow me to continue to advocate and fight for the people in my district. It's been hard. The people think that they can just wound me and come for me and try to paint a narrative about me that's not true. And I have the strength to withstand it, but this will show that I actually stand for the right things, and I always have, and I'm never have been whatever they're trying to characterize me as. And as much as they would like to see me down, and as much as they would like to see me fall, I'm not ever gonna do it. I'm not ever gonna give up. I'm not ever gonna let somebody tear my character down through whatever media, whatever lies. They can run through my C&E. They can keep doing it. They can keep coming for me and acting like I am in the wrong for standing up for my own people when they actually should be standing up for their own people that they serve. And the audacity to think that they have the right to discredit me because I am standing up for 90 families over 30 years is absolutely wrong. And I've been silent. And they have been watching this play out because they had no other ammunition against me except for to make up some shit. But I can say it right now because we're coming out of this and I'm going to go home. That the person who you know me to be, which is Dina Neal, without title, I really am an advocate for my people, and I really have stood for integrity and served them. And so, as much as you would like to throw dirt on me, keep doing it. Because the constituents who I serve don't believe you, and they think you're liars.
Senator Neal, before you leave, I know you have to rush to the floor. I just want to let you know that you're not in this fight alone. We know you, we see you, your community sees you, and we have your back. We definitely have your back in that, and we appreciate the presentation. I know you got to run off, so we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 450. And members, the appropriation for this bill was amended into the bill on the first reprint on the Senate side, so there's no amendments that we need to make on this side. So with that, I will accept a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair, I move to do pass Senate Bill 450.
Second.
I have a motion from Assemblyman Miller, a second from Assemblywoman Hadi. Any discussion on the motion? Assemblywoman Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. I'll vote this out at committee. There was just, some of the points I brought up that would like to see some more work on that. And one other thing I thought of was, because it says here to apply for federal funds. And so it would be nice to see if federal funds are received, then that would reduce the portion, I guess, from the city. Because if you try and use ARPA funds, then, because if federal funds come in, then you could reduce the portion. Just a thought. So just questions like that I have, but I'll vote it out at committee. And
I appreciate that. I just don't think we'll get those federal funds within the next 48 hours, 42 hours, but I appreciate the comment. Okay, that makes sense. Any other comments?
The first part.
Perfect. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimous. Yeah, thank you. Stay on. It was going like this. It's tired. We do have one more bill hearing, but we have 3 work sessions before that. We're going to do those really quick so I can get those out to the floor, and then we'll do the last bill hearing. Members, earlier today we had a bill presentation on Assembly Bill 528, and we will open the work session on Assembly Bill 528. There was some discussion during the hearing, if you remember correctly. There was on Section 4 of the bill, where the definition for lead participant only said means a nonprofit corporation, and it would be the chair's suggestion to add a local nonprofit, Nevada nonprofit corporation. And then going to section 12.2D, in that section, another member cited that most affordable housing projects have a 30-year cease. And in the bill, it only listed 10, and it would be the chair's motion to amend that to 30 years to be in line with other affordable housing projects. So with those two amendments, I would accept a motion to amend and do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 529. I'd correct that. Madam Chair, I'd move to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 528.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? We have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadiki, and discussion from Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. I just have to say that I really appreciated the presentation, the detail that's included in the bill, and look forward to working through this as we go forward. I want to just draw attention to the local nonprofits that are on the ground solving the problems right now, to make sure that as we continue to develop this going forward, we don't leave them out and unintentionally do them harm, right? I think it's just going to be really important that as this corporation, this Nevada nonprofit is developed, that we take into consideration the existing teams that are doing the work on the ground currently.
Assemblywoman Anderson, would you raise your hand?
Thank you, and I also appreciate the theory and everything within the presentation earlier today. I'm not from the Clark County area, so I don't know it as well as others do. So I had an opportunity to speak with a few of my colleagues that are from Clark County, and there were three that made it pretty clear that they did have a concern around making sure that it was not unduly concentrated of the unsheltered population in that one area. And I know that has been mentioned many times during the hearing, so I really think that's really important to put that on the record. And I know that we'll also discuss it before it goes to a full floor vote, but I just wanted to make sure that was also on the record that I will be voting for this because I think the idea is very good. I'm just concerned about the location being creating a very large group as opposed to a large concentration of areas.
Thank you for that. I believe a question was asked during the presentation, and the presenters had said that there would be different areas, projects in different areas of the Clark County Valley, not centralized in one area there is one project in one centralized location, but this would not be the same. So, and we'll have to hold them to that. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. With that, we'll close that work session and we'll open the work session for Senate Bill 82. We heard this just a few days ago, members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 82, as amended, makes various changes to the requirements for the use of apprentices on public works. It expands the circumstances under which a person is treated as an apprentice for certain requirements. It eliminates the threshold of numbers of workers for the applicability of certain requirements for certain apprentices. I would note that the Labor Commissioner did include a fiscal note on this particular piece of legislation. If this were to be approved, they identified $376,876 in 2025 for 4 new full-time positions and associated operating expenditures to review, audit, and investigate the annual reporting requirements associated with Senate Bill 82. And so with that, Madam Chair, if the committee wished to move this, the amendment to add that additional funding would need to be provided in this, and it would be an amend do pass.
Thank you, members. You've heard the amendment that would be needed for the appropriations for this bill. And with that, I will accept a motion to amend and do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to amend and do pass Senate Bill 82.
Second. We have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadiki. All in favor? I should have asked for discussion, and I'm so sorry. Was there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous of members present. And we are running out of time, so we will close the work session on Senate Bill 82, and we will open the hearing for Assembly Bill 529. Good evening.
Good night. Chairman Moreno, my name is P.K. O'Neill. I'm from Assembly District 40, and I'm here this evening, boarding tonight, to present to you Assembly Bill 529. And first, I want to apologize. This is an emergency bill. I know it just came up, but the issues just came before me, and it has such support from the various county elected officials that I felt it was appropriate to bring it forth and give the opportunity for a hearing. Basically, this bill is allowing the counties, the elected officials in the counties, to receive raises just as we have already dedicated to our state employees, to the district judges, and to our Supreme Court judges, giving them that opportunity. And that's it in summation, and open for any questions if you may have them.
Members, I know you just got this bill. It was being printed as we walked in. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look it over. If you have not, we can ask NACO, who's at the table, to go into a little bit more detail for the members before we take it to a vote.
Thank you, Chair. He told me to just sort of stand by as the main presenter, but
And
I'm
you
happy
believe
to.
that?
I said keep it short.
Happy to do it. I'll do my best. So if I go long, I apologize. I'll just walk briefly through the bill, and I do want to say, for the record, my name is Vincent Guthrow. Last name is Guthreau. I serve as the executive director of the Nevada Association of Counties. We collective voice for all 17 of Nevada's counties. So I'll just walk through the bill just very briefly, and I will make one point before I do that. This is a local government expense, so there is no state fiscal impact to local government salaries. It's just that they are listed in NRS, so we need to come to you currently. So the first piece of this bill, in Section 1, we are providing a catch-up provision. It has been 6 years since there has been a change to compensation for local elected officials. That includes the county commissioners on my board, but these are also those other elected offices, such as your clerks, recorders, assessors, public administrators in some counties when they serve that way. So we are providing an initial 15% increase in base salaries. The second piece of the bill that I wanted to highlight is that subsequent adjustments would then be based on classified state worker compensation, and we are doing that to provide still some state oversight over the collective statewide sort of fiscal piece, but to actually take you out of the business of doing this, essentially, so that we don't have to come to you every couple of years, that it just matches what other public servants are receiving. Subsequently, in the bill, there are some provisions throughout the bill that make this apply to county commissioners. As you can see, the elected offices for the county electeds are listed, and then the commissioners are separated out. And then the last piece is that you never know, and you can't anticipate what budgetary impacts might be at the local level. Downturns, global economic pieces, or budgetary impacts. So there is an opt-out provision for a board of county commissioners, and then that would, if they opt out or fluctuate that increase in some way, they would need to do that by a majority vote, and it would apply to all elected officials. That is the bill in a nutshell, and thank you to this committee for considering it.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Assemblywoman Kasama.
So there's no general fund appropriations. This is just allowing counties to, out of their funds, provide for raises how they'd like.
Correct. Through you, Chair, to Assemblywoman Kasama, that is correct. To get that on the record again, this is a local government expense, but they are set in statute currently.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's obvious that we hold the wrong elected positions because we're here at midnight and we're not getting paid. So, Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I'll ask you to step back. And I'll invite anyone to the table that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 529.
Good evening, Stephen Wood, tonight representing Carson City, and we are enthusiastically in support of this bill. Thank you.
Good evening, Helen Foley representing Story County, ditto.
Good evening, Beth Schmidt representing Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We support this bill.
John Jones on behalf of the Nevada District Attorneys Association. We support this bill.
Good evening, Pam Del Porto, Executive Director, Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association. We support this bill. Thank you.
Mary Walker, for the record, representing Douglas, Lyon, and Story counties. We wholeheartedly support this bill and thank Assemblyman O'Neill for bringing this forward. And also, if this bill doesn't go through, it would be 8 years. It would actually be 8 years before they'd have a race. So thank you so much.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Mark Fiorentino, we represent Nye County. We support the bill and hope that doesn't change your mind on it.
Thank you so much for that. BPS, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Assembly Bill 529?
If you would like to testify in support, opposition, or neutral on Assembly Bill 529, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you so much. So coming back here to Carson City, is there anyone here in the room that would like to testify in opposition or in neutral on Assembly Bill 529? Not seeing any. Any closing comments? All right, and with that, we will close the hearing on Assembly Bill 529. And seeing that there are no amendments for this bill, I will open the work session. Okay. I will open the work session for Assembly Bill 529, and seeing that there's no amendments, I will accept a motion to do pass.
Madam Chair, I'd move to do pass Assembly Bill 529.
I have a motion from Assemblywoman Backus, a second from Assemblywoman Hadigi. Any discussion? Assemblyman Hafen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The original bill that this started with came from Nye County, and since I do a lot of business in Nye County and go in front of the county commissioners, I had received legal advice from my personal attorney that I would need to abstain from this. Not knowing the changes in the bill and how it now expands to all counties, in an abundance of caution, I'm going to abstain from voting tonight, being that it is now 11:15 p.m. on a Saturday. I don't think I'm calling my attorney. She might be mad at me. Hopefully I'll be able to get an answer before the floor vote, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman Yeager.
This one doesn't work. Now I have to say nice things.
Yeah, you have to say nice things.
No, Madam Chair, I just wanted to say I'm going to support the bill, but I'm just a little disappointed in how we've gotten to this process. I think there's a more robust discussion to have on this bill, but we're here at 11:15, and this thing has to get to the floor and to the Senate by midnight to survive. There were some efforts by folks along the way to what I consider to be hijack other bills to put this concept into there. Assemblyman O'Neill was gracious enough to give them this bill, and I guess I'll just say I don't know if I'm against the policy, but I don't like being put in a position to have to decide this without a real discussion on the bill. So I would just hope in the Senate side, where they have a full 3 days to consider the bill, that that discussion can be had, because I think it's an important one. You know, for those of you out here who want this bill, you should be very thankful that Assemblyman O'Neill did it, because I think the efforts to hijack other bills were not the appropriate way to go about this. So I hope that discussion can happen, but to keep this thing alive, I will vote for it, and hopefully we can get down to the floor in time to get this over to the Senate in the next 45 minutes.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other discussion, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. And that will take us to the last item on the agenda because we're not coming back tonight. Is there anyone here for public comment? I invite you to the table to make public comment. Not seeing anyone here in Carson City coming to the table. Not seeing anyone in Las Vegas BPS. Do we have anyone joining us by phone that would like to make public comment?
Comment. Please press star 9 now to take it. Chair, there are no callers choosing comment at this time.
Seeing no one for public comment, this meeting is adjourned. I'll see you all on the floor.
Yeah, I would just throw them all in.